Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Release Team 1028 retro meeting. This is part two. We had a part one, which was mid-cycle of the release cycle. Now we are past release date, so the releases has been finalized. And this is the second part. We have a couple of action items. Please be aware that this is a Kubernetes SIG release team meeting. So it falls under the CNCF Code of Conduct, which can be summarized to be just excellent to each other. I shared the retro agenda in Slack. No, not in Slack, in Zoom. So if you would like to take a look and follow along, please open up the document. I believe the retro follow-up from last time, we already did this. So let me go down the document. There are a couple of highlights here. Basically, we have followed up on all of this, which is above. So we can just jump ahead to this one. And the first one is actually one that I added. It's about team presentations and spotlights in the release team meetings. So this is one thing that we tried out this time. I think everybody enjoyed this, at least from my point of view. I think having short demonstrations in the release team meetings about what one team is up to, I think is very helpful. So I think that's great. Something we should definitely do next cycle too. Any comments, questions? Did you also like the presentations?
I think that'll be a
Otherwise,
great addition
yeah.
and get folks still involved.
Yeah, I think it's also very great for shadows, because they have like a very good point of view. Okay, what is my team up to? But it's kind of difficult sometimes to understand what is a different team up to. So I think these spotlights are a good way. All right. Is there anything else what you would like to highlight? What went well in 1028? Otherwise, we can jump to the next section. All right. Then moving on to the next one. What could have gone better in 1028? We already talked about a couple of things. Is there anything which I missed here? I believe nothing here is a new item, right? Otherwise, stop me, please. Oh, I see there's like something added here. Rashid, are you on the call?
Yeah. So, so should I probably just start saying um, what I just
You're a
wrote?
little quiet right now, if you don't mind speaking up.
Sorry, should I just start saying what I wrote over here about what could have been
Yes,
better for?
if you like, you can just present like this topic. I can also read it out loud if you like.
Oh, yeah, I can just give
Um,
a summary of that. So I think that there could have been better reporting for the status at each weekly call. And I think I mainly missed this because I was under the impression that having been on the release team previously, that a lot of docs updates got merged at the very near to the deadline, and I guess these were the exact times when I needed to present a yellow status or a red status, and I I was just under the impression that all of this has always happened with docs of getting reviews very late to the very near to the deadline. So I missed that, and I think that could have been a lot better in 1.28. And I guess like the other two and the other two things that could have been better in 1.28 would be, I also faced an issue with GitHub permissions on the release day. So it didn't allow me to merge a PR I had made because the PR didn't. I guess the PR didn't have any reviews, and it was also failing tests. So, so I also needed to. Uh, so I also needed to merge that, and I didn't have enough GitHub permissions to do that, even after being added to the website maintainers. And I also think that we should probably be documenting. So we should probably also be documenting what some of the labels on the board means. Uh, yeah, I just saw that as some of the shadows are uh, a different impression of what some of those items meant. So uh, probably we should also document that.
Right. Thanks, Rashid. I know we have a couple of discussion items about dogs, so maybe we can, for now, just like focus on the reporting. So I think this was like the first one, like the status update in the release team meetings. Is there anything like obviously like these reportings are kind of opaque, so like what is like really yellow, what is really red, what is green? So there's like not like a very specific, usually not a very specific guidelines for some teams. For example, if there's like a blocking issue for CS Signal, for example, which blocks the release card, this is like a red flag. So are there any ideas how we can improve that in general?
Yeah, I actually do have ideas around this, and I think I've added those in the subsequent sections. So the very first thing I think would be, and I think Tim has made a very good point about providing the psychological safety to for the leads to actually say that it's red, yellow, and green by checking what are the activities that are expected of them in their role handbooks. Like, I don't know why a particular, like, most of this release has been green, like Rishit has clearly mentioned, and I don't know whether that was due to the lack of psychological safety around presenting otherwise, or due to the fact that he was not aware of the roles of expected of him in responsibilities expected of him as the documentation lead vertical. So essentially, I think one of the good things to actually have to be that needs to be done is to provide the leads with psychological safety to ensure that they're able to report the respective status on the call. And the second thing would be to have the release lead actually know what the expected outcomes of them would be. Like, for example, I can comment to docs and comms because I've worked in those verticals. So docs are supposed to, have regular branch syncs. You're supposed to, flag up any issues with potential branch syncs, or, see if there are issues with, getting hold of a particular SIG for technical reviews, stuff like that. Like, how do you ascertain? Again, I know it's very subjective. It's not obviously a very set in stone thing, but one thing that I would recommend is to actually flag this issue up during the release team meetings that you all have on a regular cadence, and say that XYZ are the issues that are actually we're actually facing, and then also transfer it to the docs call. Both the comms and the docs team should be doing this, in our opinion, because they would be able to flag this on a much more frequent basis, and we could have avoided the last minute rush. So, two things, TLDR, I'll stop rambling after this. First thing is for each of the role vertical leads to go through their accountability checklist. First, have a checklist on what the roles and responsibilities are for that particular lead, and a certain what, based on that, whether it's yellow, green, red. The second thing would be to actually bring up these issues, bubble up these issues on both the calls. This would sort of help with any communication that we have to have around these particular issues. That's just me, though.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thanks. I
And
can
I think
already
one
see a
point,
couple of action items coming from this, but maybe first, Natalie, and then Miki, if you would
sure,
like to
go.
say something.
Thanks. Hi everyone, my name is Natalie Vlatko. I'm also SIG Doc co-chair along with Ray and Divya on this call. I wanted to actually jump on something that you said, Leo, this idea of updates and weekly updates being somewhat opaque. And I think on the docs end, that could be something that we could possibly work with so that that's not the case. Because that line of updates being opaque is, to be super honest, a little concerning for me in terms of then what are you supposed to be updating on? My first impression would be that there are a bunch of to-dos around branch syncs, as Divya already mentioned, generating reference docs, but also there are deadlines around docs where updates could be given around, for example, are the docs that a certain SIG are meant to actually have draft already by a certain date, are they responsive about those docs? And that could be a way to indicate status of we're maybe yellow on certain docs because we have had no touch point, or we've tried to work with certain SIGs or certain authors and we're not getting anything from them, for example. So I think we'd be happy to help out to kind of help with that checklist of what does a docs or comms or whatever other checklist look like, so that the updates don't feel opaque. And then whatever lead is in whatever role then is able to accurately report on what they feel is red, green, or yellow for them. So if they're looking to try and get things merged and the authors are just not responsive, that is an automatic yellow in my mind, because there is clearly a blockage happening and we need to kind of step in there. And they can then also take on responsibility of making a decision around, there's no response, this doesn't make the docs deadline, and thus this is cut from a checked enhancement or release or whatever. So I would like to actually definitely put my hand up to help work on what those updates could look like, so that we as a SIG and maybe other SIGs that have their own interest in this feel a lot more secure in what those updates should be and how we then receive them.
Great. Awesome.
Yeah, similar lines. One thing that came up during the release when I was talking to Ray was just the importance of joining the calls of the respective SIGs that leads are working with. I don't think that's something that we actually have documented in many of the role handbooks, but where it applies in particular, like comms meeting with contrabecs or docs meeting with SIG docs, I think that's something that we can certainly add to the role handbooks, because I think that's a good way to make sure there's an established relationship where there needs to be one between the actual SIG that owns that sort of part of the release and then the release team itself. I know that when I was docs lead, I worked with Ray. I mean, it felt like weekly. So we were very much aligned with what we were working on. And I know that I also worked with Natalie and Divya on the release day itself. So I think it's important to make sure that we actually remind everybody to be very aligned with the respective SIG that they're working with.
Right.
Yeah, I do want to make a note that that I would like to hear if status is yellow or red, so that gives me action, or gives me a call to action. Lets me know that something has there's an issue that needs attention to it. So I just want to make sure that that shadows and role leads feel safe to mark something as not green as well. So just want so we should be clear with that, and either in handbooks or in the shadow orientation, where that it's okay, and it's actually, for me personally, it's better. I would rather see it if it's truly not green, I would rather see it be exact to reflect to the current status. Also, but for the docs handbook as well, we actually do note that for the time requirements for docs lead and shadows is to attend SIG docs meetings for status reports. It actually states 1 hour weekly, but we've gone to bi-weekly meetings. So, but yeah, it's already stated in the handbook. Yeah, so there's other changes, additions we need to reinstate or to state that in other places as well. Maybe add it, to the entire release timeline. For the docs handbook, we certainly could do that, but it is in the docs README file.
Sorry to jump in. I just want to say big +1 on what Ray said, and I think it's because we in I'm just speaking for docs, we don't expect that every status update needs to be green and that we do nothing. Like if it's yellow, we want to help be in there and help out. Like we're working on this all together, right? So that's the purpose on making sure that we're kind of teaming up and knowing what a legit status is, so that we know when we can help out and step in if need to, or support and wrangle folks, because of maybe someone will listen to a docs person for docs versus release team for some reason, as an example. So I just want to kind of further clarify that we want that because we want to help, for sure.
Is it just me or is Leo frozen?
I think it's frozen.
I think, yeah.
Yeah, frozen for me too.
Okay, we'll give him a second. While Lee's coming back, one thing that Natalie said that piqued my attention is that we typically have never kicked an enhancement out because they don't have docs. So we don't enforce that deadline well. And so I think as a result, it has created this kind of expectation that docs PRs will be overdue. But I think it can certainly be done. Like, we can strictly enforce that deadline. I think it has just in the past been easier for us to grant them the extension and keep following up because we want for them to continue to participate.
So jumping on to what you just said, Grace, I've worked with docs and comms, and the issue is not per se with the PRs not being approved. Like, I do get that every cycle has those like stray 3 4 PRs here and there that need approval at the last minute. They tend to happen because, as much as we'd like to believe, all of us here are doing this voluntarily, and it does happen that we end up getting it here and there. Some of the PRs, I'm not going to say all of them, but this cycle, it was slightly difficult, and given the feedback that we've given over the last couple of cycles, this was a little difficult for us to digest. That there was a lot to handle because the comms team was also burdened with the fact that they did not have a publishing date, and then we had to set all of that into motion, get the release blog out, get it reviewed from a technical perspective. So it all sort of snowballed at the end. So we get that there will be dates. I'm not asking for a strong enforcement, but bubbling up those issues earlier on would have helped in reducing and sort of smoothing the workload across the cycle, or at least across the last few weeks of the cycle, as opposed to just being done, all of it happening on the same day, and Ray, me, Natalie, and Tim like struggling to get tech approvals, and folks to actually concentrate on specific PRs. So this is majorly an ask for people to come up and feel safe to come up and say that hey, we have an issue, we want your help, please help us. That's all we're asking, and report it to us. That is all. Like, we don't expect that people will be able to give everything in on the exact deadline. It's not possible. But they're working on enhancements, and I get it. Docs are not much of a priority, and unfortunately that's something that we're going to have to deal with. But bubbling it up in time is something that we expect, so that we can ensure our workload and your workloads are smoothened over time, rather than everything snowballing at the last moment.
Right. Apologies, my internet just cut off, so I was not following the last 2 minutes. But I already see we are kind of already in the middle of the discussion about docs and everything around this, and also comms a little bit. Maybe Mark, if you're around, could you give me co-host so I can share my screen again? Would be great. And so I just wanted to add one comment to this, and then perhaps we can wrap this up, not like the entire docs discussion, because we have a couple of other action items on this. But one point from me is we have talked about docs quite a bit now, but I think the entire discussion about giving status updates obviously applies to everybody else too, so all the other teams. So maybe this is like a good point, like a tracking issue for the other teams as well, to scan the handbook if there are like clear actionable like thresholds or whatever, when to give like a red flag, when to give like a yellow flag, and so on. So maybe we can improve in general the handbooks in that way. Awesome, thanks, Mark.
Yeah, just one thing I like to add on this. So what happened with us in CI signal in this release is that we had some flaky tests from 1.27. And we have become so used to those flaky tests that we actually don't change the signal to yellow. They are still flaking, but we give out the signal as green because we have become used to those failures. So something sort of that is documented in the handbook, that even if we have a flake that has been flaking for a long time, we give out a yellow signal to get that fixed. So some sort of documentation would be good for the lead handbook or the shadow handbook.
Great, sounds good. Is there somebody who would like to take the overall tracking issue about this? And then, for example, for dogs and comms, maybe we can ask the SIG leagues about volunteering and jumping in.
Yeah, I can work with the SIG doc leads to try to put something together for the docs handbook in particular.
Yeah, I was just writing a note to our leads too, Mikey. You can have a point with me on that, and we'll put a doc together specifically for docs for like how to track different status updates for that. That'd be great.
Sounds good.
Right, sounds awesome. Okay, because we are still kind of on this discussion item, Rashid, is there something I have missed which we would like to talk about before we move on? So for example, there's like one about document labels. Would you like to open up an issue so we can follow up on this?
Yeah, sure. So that, and also the GitHub permissions, I can most certainly do.
Comment on this. So for the permission side of things, I'm not quite sure because as far as I know, nothing really changed in the last cycles. So this is kind of, well, I guess we can follow up this on an issue. That sounds good.
Okay, sure. Sounds good.
All right. So moving on to the to the discussion item from Divya. We have talked about a couple of things on this already. Is there something, Divya or Ray, Natalie, would you like to talk about, which we have not yet mentioned in the previous item?
Yeah, I think there's just one thing. And I think Ray has bubbled up that thing as well in his item. So I let him add on. Um, I basically believe that from the comms perspective, a blog publishing schedule was missing till I think the week before the release. As far as I remember, but is when I wrote this, so I don't exactly remember, but it was missing, and we were not sure when that actually ended up, being designed or when that actually happened to be published. So a lot of authors were reaching out to us on the issues specifically. So I don't know if it's still a thing to publish, to have a publishing cadence or a publishing schedule for the release. It was during my time as a comms lead, but if not, I would sort of recommend it because at the end of the day, it makes life easier for everyone, not just us, not just you, but in general, people know when to, push their changes by and finish off whatever they are supposed to, push into the respective PRs. So I would recommend that the schedule be actually drawn out once you have an idea of the major themes and stuff like that. And with that, I'll hand it over to Ray because I realize I've been talking for quite a bit. So yeah.
Yeah, just to add that, I know on the enhancements tracking board, there's a view for the for comms, and there is a column for the publication date. Once that publication date has been already been determined, that should be communicated back to the blog authors, and that should be added to the handbook. Because there was confusion. I think we had about 4 blogs set to publish on release day, and typically only the release blog is published on release day. We actually had another blog that was published on release day as well, because the publication date wasn't communicated to the blog author. But normally those feature blogs would be will start after the release, or the day after the release day.
Right, Carol?
Just one question, Ray. When you say communications, is this communication will be contact the author by the Slack, by email, or in the pull request, like notify the date of the publication date?
I will leave that up to the comms team to determine what the best way to communicate back. How are comms, how are enhancements opting in for blog posts? Is that through the issue as well, or is that through another form?
Okay, so it's not defined, and we need to define it in the handbook of the comms. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we could, I'll let comms determine what the best way to communicate that, what that would be. But someplace public would be better, not like a private Slack message, but either public Slack in a Slack channel, get a comment.
What do you think about in the pull request and also in the docs Slack channel, in the public channel that we have the blog published?
I think the pull request would be fine as well.
Okay. Yeah, I am taking notes to try to improve the handbooks. And I think these 2 places will be enough to notify in the pull request and also in the blog, in the public Slack channel.
All right, sounds good. So would you like to open up also an issue, Carol, for this?
Okay, yeah, I will create it. This issue.
Awesome, thanks.
Thank you.
Is there something else where we would like to take action to improve this?
Well, now that I am talking, I put an issue about the block release, and it will be nice if we have a branch that we started to create this block release to everyone, review it and merge it easily, and it's not be tagged to the lead, to the private repository of the commons lead that was happening in the last blog. I don't know if you got the idea, but if not, I can explain.
I think probably the SIGDoc leads.
I don't think that's a route I would go with, because blog posts typically come after the release. So right now we target the main branch. Since it goes after the release. If we have a separate branch for the blogs, we would have to maintain that branch. So there will be issues once we merge that branch into main as well. And that's going to be a lot of effort. I'm not going to suggest going that route to maintaining a separate blog release branch. I mean, right now we work for blogs, it just goes to main. It could be set in draft at first as well. Or blogs could also be reviewed before a pull request. It could be reviewed in HackMD. For our blog process today, they are not part of releases, and this might be something that's good to be included with the release, that we would actually like to prefer to review the blog post in HackMD, or it's a place or something before making the PR, and then the PR could be made, and it'll be less iterations on that PR. So there's one suggestion we could go route. I mean, go, but I don't suggest we go the separate blog release branch.
Yeah, and plus one,
Um,
yeah, adding it in HackMD because we had a lot of success doing that with release blogs in the past, and I think it's a much easier way to collaborate without a lot of messy PRs.
Plus
Right.
one to what Mickey and Bree have said. As a previous comms lead myself, we've done the HackMD way, and we've had success because we've asked people to collaborate over there. But again, not limiting you to HackMD. Please try whatever works for you. Not saying that you have to try that out, but I think having a branch is going to make it more complicated than not for everyone involved. So yeah.
okay, I just put in the comments because my idea it's only to have a branch for the pull requests about this block, not all the blocks, only about the block of the release, because we have like, if you can see, we have a lot of comments and reviews, and it's more easily for all the community and also the owners of the enhancements or review it. But yeah, if you think about that, Hack MD will be a good idea to review it. Okay.
Bianca?
Hey, thank you everyone for giving feedback on the doc side. I just have a request from the docs lead. Uh, Tim actually added a few feedback on the 129 timeline PR, and I have added few milestones to just make some noise for getting docs ready or other feature blogs ready in time, like way before, so that we have time for review. I would request more feedback if I could include anything in the timeline itself, so I know what would be the right time. The docs lead actually expect, like in ideal case, we expect things to be done. At least we can try um, doing that if we have timelines documented somewhere. So I welcome any feedback on that PR with respect to just adding few more timelines for
Okay.
docs and comms communications. Yeah, that's all. Thank you. And I've added the PR link in the chat. Or no, now. Thank you.
Okay, any comments to this one? So it's kind of like in another action item or a different one. Maybe to wrap this up, the discussion from Carol. Is there anything else regarding the comms team where we would like to take action? Otherwise, I think that's already very good.
Just a reminder that, for docs updates coming to the meetings, we expect the same for comms as well. So like also attending.
What you just mentioned. Yeah.
Cool.
Yep. Franka, did you are thinking of adding new deaths or just getting a review, the kind of proposal, the release flag structure?
Sorry, I did not catch it. Are you asking, do I want feedback on somewhere else or on the timeline PR? Is that what you are asking?
Or maybe my internet is a little bit. But maybe I did not understand this correctly, but are you thinking about adding new deadlines to the
Oh,
release cycle?
not really deadlines,
Or
but some.
are you just asking about getting a review on your proposal, how this is structured?
So I can add an example. Tim had added feedback, basically asking me to encourage, let's say, docs lead and docs shadows to start reaching out to the authors, maybe let's say right after enhancements freeze, within 1 week of enhancements freeze. Maybe one example was to just open PRs, if docs PR, even they are empty PRs. So I have added like a milestone there, something like initiate outreach for so and so. So that is a good pointer for me to encourage docs team. And if I can add more milestone, just some pointers for me to start like letting other people know this is what is expected. I'm trying to get feedback on those lines. So yeah, like we discussed, if communications around feature blogs can happen by this week in the release cycle, that would make docs, the SIG docs and other people in the docs reviewer team will make their work, will make it more comfortable for them to review. So if like I could get some pointers like by this week, it would be manageable. Then I can add like a line there just as a pointer for me to start letting people know let's do this. Yeah.
Yeah, Priyanka, you're welcome. If you want to talk about this offline, I've been a
Yep.
doc chat box lead, so we can work on it together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I'll follow up. I think. Thank you.
Right. All right. I mean, like what is status up and so on, that we have like these thresholds. So it's kind of probably closely. All right. Divya, is there something I have missed?
Nothing. I assume that the question was there anything you missed from my side of things? No, I think we've covered it all. Thank you for having us here.
All right, sounds good. All right, then moving on to the next one. Or is this even the next one? Mickey, you added a note here.
Really quick, can I maybe get a volunteer for Leo? Your internet is pretty sketchy right now. Can we maybe get a volunteer to take over moderation in the meantime?
Grace, do you have the doc up? If not, I can share on my side.
Yeah. Can I have host permission, Leo?
Thanks. Awesome.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
All right, can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, we were here-ish, right? I think a lot of these is there any other items on comms? I think one of the problems with comms is also that they were trending green, but a lot of the items in the release blog itself wasn't double checked, and that resulted in a large number of fix-ups.
Yeah, typically, I can only speak to the number of PRs I've reviewed last week. We have had a lot of fix-ups on the release blog in terms of, um, not only from the technical perspective, but like minor typo edits, which are okay, I guess, but we've not seen them as a trend in previous releases. So, um, I guess having that schedule in place would really help, because again, everything's snowballing at the wrong time, sort of makes us want to push everything out of the door before the deadline starts. So having that schedule in place really does help. So yeah.
Yeah, just want to say big plus one, like one example is, a release was featured in the release blog that actually didn't make it. And so like being able to make sure that we are syncing the updates, let's say, that we're getting from docs and comms together so that their work also overlaps, right? So I think that was also that's also something that in the docs side of things, we're able to then bring some of that together if comms knows what is happening on the doc side too, and we can in the docs either meeting or in any other really status update, we can combine some of those things so that those kind of release docs fix ups don't happen in future. Again, that's something we're willing to do on the doc side in our meetings for status updates.
Okay. Stephen, you have your hand up?
Yeah, so two questions. First being, is there a specific classification of types of PRs that we're seeing that are coming in post-release? If they're typo fixes, folks, I would suggest, markdown linters, et cetera, on your, spell check linters on your, your editing environments. If that's stuff that we need to put into the docs handbook as a guard for this moving forward. But we should try to classify what's coming in post release, because like this is a huge burden on SIG docs. Have to try to reason about all of these things as multiple trains are leaving the station.
I was about to say the same. I feel like a lot of this, well, at least the one about the feature that didn't make the release that was on the blog isn't a burden on SIG docs. I think it was on the comms team to double check that the information coming in is correct. And so I'm curious what the experience on comms was, because I feel like half of comms team shadows weren't active, and we weren't, or Leo and I weren't aware until, we were in like the peak of work. Yeah.
And the second point, and this is maybe a larger discussion for SIG release. I'm hearing a lot of friction between reasoning about docs process, comms process, and it's maybe suggesting, softly, maybe loudly, that the docs and comms roles be combined.
Oh,
Oh, sorry. The combination part, just to clarify on my sense, on my part, is that docs and comms updates come together in the SIG docs meeting, so that like those kinds of updates are being heard together, so that if there is things that, for example, for some reason the comms team aren't aware of on the doc side, they're getting some of that information together somehow. That was a clarification on that point. Sorry, Stephen.
Yeah, no, that's cool. It sounds like some of these timelines are tightly woven together, or some of these asks are tightly woven together. Like if I expect the, docs and comms to be visiting SIG docs in tandem, that they have had a chance to sync up together so that they're going in with the same information, right? Again, suggesting that maybe that's the same team.
yeah, I think it's worth a further discussion. I mean, I've led both docs and comms before. I think if they were the same team, release day and the weeks leading up to it would probably be a nightmare for everybody involved, because all of their work is sort of backloaded. With that being said, I do think it's worth discussing because there are some areas of overlap.
Yeah, I just want to point out that I've also thought about this idea as well, and like Vicky said, that they both, docs and comms, both of the work, the majority of the work is towards the tail end of the release, and what I was trying to do, thinking wise in my head, was that there is a time period in both docs and comms where it's not a lot of work, and to somehow we can combine those roles where that there won't be such a gap. But I think it's a good idea that we could look into.
Okay. I want to add this into action items or somewhere so that we won't forget about this, and have the same conversation again next retro. So let me just put it in. Yes, Stephen?
I'm just going to call out because I saw this conversation pop up and I've been in the background listening to some feedback from various release team members and folks that are just generally involved in the process, including SIGDocs. I want to call out that and this is moving into I think we kind of run into this every retrospective and I had a whole tirade about it, in the live one. But one of the responsibilities of this group, especially in handoff moving into the next release cycle, is to make sure that things are actually handed off. Like we make sure things don't drop, right? So things should come out of the stock, land in as issues and discussions for the SIG, for our stakeholder SIGs. The emeritus advisor is responsible for driving that across the team to completion. Right? So the next emeritus advisor, like the two emeritus advisors should be having a conversation between the two releases and handovers should happen. And the new emeritus advisor should be coming in and burning down the backlog of retrospective items. In fact, that is the first responsibility that is listed in the emeritus advisor handbook.
Okay. I think Xander got dropped off. What?
I'm here. I'm listening. Me and Leo,
Okay.
we've all got a meeting tomorrow, I think, to talk. So we'll keep that in mind.
Okay. All right. In the interest of time, we are moving on. Heb, I see you have two items here. First one is lead dashboard.
Yeah, hello everyone. So actually, I talked about this dashboard long time ago, maybe 10 releases back, but I feel like it's just, like with having the GitHub projects, it might be easier now to address this. So why don't we have a project dashboard for each sub-team, similar to the bug triage and enhancement? And then we can have another dashboard just for the leads and shadow leads to have, like all the status on front of them, so they can start to notice some, maybe an issue that, oh, we have like 10 enhancements here, but in the docs, they said they have 11 enhancements. So what's going on? We need to check this. And, like all this stuff can be handled if we have all the numbers and there's a status as well in front of us. I know it might take a little bit of work, especially for the lead dashboard, but happy to help. For the sub-release sub-teams, I think it's doable right now. We can just do the same thing that bug triage and enhancements do, and just make sure that all of sub-teams already implementing this. I would like to hear from you all. What do you think about this idea? Is it feasible or not? The pros and cons.
Okay, before I hand it over to Stephen, I think each sub-team do have a dashboard right now. The problem we face is that the tasks that are not on the dashboard is not getting done. Things like syncing up brands, attending SIGDocs meetings. And so I can't visualize what that would look like. I think it's just the role of a role lead to complete those things, and we trust in them that they will do it. But I'll hand it over to Stephen, and we do have about 7 minutes left.
Yeah, so really quick, I think yes, it's important to report status and report status accurately. I think what I would ask the outgoing and incoming leads to reason about is how can we do so programmatically, right? So if you reason about how like CI signal works, right? There are some things in the stack and the things are either red or green and are somewhere in the middle, but it's usually very clear because it's based on it may be based on the disposition of tests, right? And reporting on the status of when a test owner is going to get back to you on that item, right? So like how can we reason about that for each of the tasks? Because then we move to more of a programmatic reporting, let the machines do the thing, right? And it's easy for everyone to understand. It's not necessarily dependent on any one person or any one team. We have tools to kind of bubble that up. So I'd like you to think through how we can do that.
Yeah, I agree. I think it might be like a combination of programmatically and just reviewing by the lead for the sub team. For example, I would expect if there is new enhancement and list of the GitHub tasks has been added to this enhancement. One of them is the doc. So we will just add a new column or a new row to the docs and communication dashboard, and waiting for the lead to confirm that it will be included in this release or not. What is the status? Is this something that we can do, Stephen?
Yeah, I think, people process tools, so you're never fully going to automate something away, right? And I think outside of just how, for shadows on the call, for shadows continuing, consider how you can be empowered with additional responsibilities for your section. Anecdotally, when I was shadowing this group, I effectively took over the role from Ihor because there were things that I wanted to do, and he was like, "Go for it." So I want you to strongly consider how you can more deeply get involved in the process. If you've got if you've got a suggestion for improvement, know that you are on the team because your voice matters in the discussion. So make sure it is actually heard. If you're ever not feeling that way, we have both the shadow feedback, surveys for that feedback, as well as reaching out to any of the leads to discuss.
Okay, I'm going to cap that discussion there. And would like to move on to the emerging bug triage and CI signal sub team. Priyanka, is your hand up about that?
I just had another item very much similar to what we are discussing right now, to have checklist, GitHub issues checklist for every role lead, like we currently have for the release team lead itself, which actually lists down all the tasks that the release lead is supposed to do. If we could, and I have item there, but I can park it if we want to talk about it later. Or can talk about it now if you have time.
I think that's definitely doable and would be really helpful.
Yeah. I'll just quickly walk through what I was thinking. So having a checklist like that would help in many ways. Number one is just to not have oversight on all these tasks that we are talking about that really can't be programmatically maybe monitored. We really just need to have them listed there, and somebody need to do it and check it there. So I think for me that checklist is helping me a lot because everything is listed down for me there, and I just have to do them and go back and mark it done there. So having a checklist like that for all the role leads would be helpful. It would also be helpful for the shadows because now they can see what all is required to be done for that particular role, and they can take like volunteer to take some tasks from the leads maybe, or whatever, like they have proper visibility on what all is required from that particular role, and they can divide work amongst them. And then a third thing, like I also heard a lot of feedback from previous items that maybe the leads or lead shadows were not aware that some things are not being done in certain role. Having a checklist like that would give some visibility to everyone, to the lead shadows and EA, to give some feedback or to provide some help or support, or maybe just to encourage to talk about it or flag it or something like that. So that was a point I had later, and I would love to have some thoughts on it.
I think we all agree that that's a good idea. I think that just require upfront work. And I think that also kind of aligns with what Heba was saying about kind of just a different dashboard. So it would be great if we can, own that and start that in 1.29, especially for docs and comms, because they have less work in the beginning of the release. We do really have to move on though. So merging block triage and CI signal subteam. I'm not sure if folks have anything to say about it, except that we need a tracking issue for it. And it is a thing that's going to happen in 1.29.
Yeah.
I'm just going to zoom through what we will do differently. Just going to skip this because there's a tracking issue out there. Yeah, so Natalie and SigDocs had a question about unresponsive leads and how folks can flag it. And I think if we have this template of what a role lead should do, and if that's not being done, then that makes it easier for shadows or other SIGs to step up and flag it. And then I think this is what you just talked about, Priyanka, the checklist.
Yep, correct.
Yes, Stephen?
Real quick, and this question had come up in the background too, like what do we do about unresponsive? I think just also with the shadows, have a discussion and remove them, right? Like if you are not doing the work, you're not on the team, right? And have that discussion with the groups. This is, again, we have an entire community counting on us to execute on this release. And the having people named who are not doing the work is not fair to people who are.
Yeah, I think agree with that. I have a PR open right now for what happens when lead is not responsive and when shadow is not responsive. And I think currently we are quite reluctant to remove shadows. And I don't think I've seen an instance of us doing that before, but 100% agree. I think the work on comms was really difficult on Brad and Carol because they were mostly the main two people doing it at the peak of its work. But also a reminder to the role leads at the beginning that, they need to surface this as soon as possible. I think that was one of the oversight, that I didn't actually find out that the shadows was unresponsive until it was kind of too late.
And do we want to figure out a plan for backfilling the shadows that we let go? And then also, what about something like Kubernetes org membership?
Okay, want to respect everybody's time here because we are at time, but I think a follow-up meeting is necessary. I think this is a really big topic that we keep coming back to, unresponsive shadows and potentially unresponsive lead. I think, Leo, you propose a time tomorrow for 30 minutes. Can folks do the same time today, tomorrow? Or we can schedule something for next week and I will send out a doodle.
Maybe plan to do it in the if we don't have something officially scheduled already because it's so hard to get people in place in general. Let's do it as we usually do and push it to the SIG release meeting, the next SIG release meeting.
Push it to this next SIG release meeting. Let me check my calendar when that is.
So Tuesday, I think.
Next Tuesday? Okay. Okay. That will be a good discussion, big and chunky discussion item for the SIG release meeting. And it'll be good to have the SIG release folks there as well on top of the release team. Okay, we have a few action items here, mostly on comms and docs, and then the template that Priyanka talked about. Thank you everyone for attending, and hopefully I will see you all in the SIG release meeting on Tuesday.
Thanks a lot, everyone.
Thanks for organizing. Thank you.